we set up Doge.
Yes.
How much do you think we can rip out of this wasted $6.5 trillion Harris-Biden budget?
Well, I think we can do at least $2 trillion.
Yeah!
Yes.
Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy think they can cut over $2 trillion out of the federal budget. And then when you're looking at the total federal budget, depending on the year, but it's somewhere around like $6.5 trillion. So you're essentially talking about 1/3 of the budget. And, you know, I mean, Elon Musk, and he cut 80% of the budget at Twitter, right? So, I mean, maybe is he going to Twitterfy the whole U.S. government? I mean, what's going to happen, Scott?
Yeah, he's gonna carry a sink into every government agency and, I guess, flush out the dead wood. He faces a huge challenge, and the math, the ambitions are great, and I love hearing about it because I've been studying government waste and inefficiency and the size of government for 35 years. And I've been frustrated by the continued growth of the federal government, the amount of waste that's there, the programs that have lived well beyond their relevancy and original missions, the amount of duplication. All of these things are a big challenge. The math, however, is very challenging. And as you mentioned, their goal is to cut about 1/3 of the budget out. That's hard to do because let's look at the math. Out of that roughly $6.5 trillion worth of annual spending, the first $1.5 trillion is Social Security. The second trillion is Medicare. And then Medicaid comes in at about $600 billion. So now we're looking with some of the other entitlement programs at about $4 trillion that are very sensitive programs that are going to be hard to sort of wrestle some reforms. And then interest on the national debt is about another $1 trillion. So now we're looking at $5 trillion out of 6.5. So what are we left with? Defense is another almost $1 trillion. And so not to say that there's not efficiencies there are. But again, that's an area in which many people think we ought to increase spending or rearrange spending. And that leaves you the domestic side of the budget, which is everything from congressional salaries, which ought to be cut, to, Department of Education, Transportation, Labor, Housing, Urban Development, HHS, and all these other things. So the math is a big challenge. And I know I've gone through this exercise a couple of times in my career in the safety of my white ivory tower think tank office, but it's a big challenge. It's not to say that there isn't a tremendous amount of waste and duplication, redundancy, programs that really don't belong there anymore. But again, the math makes this a really big challenge. And then the politics of it. Behind every one of those programs that you and I will never encounter in our lives is a constituency that will just scream and yell if any dollar of their budget gets cut. So that too, beyond the math, makes this a huge, huge challenge. And however, I welcome it. I think this is a great thing that they should be doing. Previous efforts along this lines have been mixed. During the 1940s, former President Herbert Hoover led a reform project and was quite successful in rearranging some of the deck chairs of government. He led a second effort in the 1950s, not so successful. Ronald Reagan had his Grace Commission, which produced, 2,000 different recommendations that were never enacted because Congress didn't do anything with it. Similarly, we saw during Bill Clinton's administration, the Reinventing Government program led by Al Gore. That spent more time asking how government should do things rather than what government should do. And so it didn't have much of a lasting effort. So again, these kind of projects can either just be boutique exercises or they can be substantive. And a lot of it will depend on whether Congress plays along.